saw my phone for the first time and I saw, Trump wins. And Jarrod posed a question that really was the catalyst for a lot of reflection on my part and started this process of what else is going on. And the question was,
what are we missing?
Yeah.
Men had to give women their rights, but women didn't have rights. And then one day men said, okay, you can vote, you can do these things. And I don't know how that ever changes. I don't know.
I think it's more men.
Welcome back to Over Dinner. I'm Jarrod.
And I'm Dr. Nikki. We're not experts. We're just two people doing the work together and apart.
Sharing real and unfiltered conversations about the human experience.
And we as humans are surely experiencing a lot of things right now.
We are.
There's a lot going on.
A lot going on.
It's been a long, emotionally roller coaster last 2 days. I think a lot of us are coming down from basically like 2 years. You think like from the midterms.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know. We could even track it backwards. Like we've been all waiting for this of a second Trump term. And it's like now that it's here, it's been a really interesting experience for me specifically with coming to terms with that and making peace with that. And I think it's really fascinating, which we're really excited to talk about tonight is I think what's fascinating is that we ended the last episode, me questioning Jarrod's compassion and empathy towards Trump supporters. Because at that time, I was not able to see that at all. And so over these past 2 days, it's been a really eye-opening experience for me to deal with the grief and the concern and the worry while also opening my eyes to other things.
Yeah,
and in the midst of that, we went through the election together and apart. And apart. And we went through election together and apart, but also the fact that we had a big fight.
Yes.
That happened as tension was really high and we were both feeling things really differently and the same, but showed up very differently. So we ended up having a disagreement, probably bigger than a disagreement.
So a little bit bigger than that.
It blew up. Yep. And then Wednesday happened where just kind of sitting with everything. Luckily, we did have couples therapy.
A lot of confusion that day.
A lot of confusion. It was just it was a day. And then luckily we had couples therapy and we were able to work through some things, which we'll be sharing with you tonight. And then I personally have had a really transformative experience within these last 2 days that I think is really important to share due to the fact that the way we ended the last episode and when we talk about the human experience and we talk about growth, I think it can happen in a couple ways. One, like for me, sometimes when things click, they click. Other times it takes a really long time to get there, which is probably like what led me to this. It took me a really long time to get to this place and then it clicked. But it's also a really big light bulb for me that this stuff is temporary. So it's this ever-flowing experience of new information coming in and us relating to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I would say when you say, you mentioned their empathy and compassion to people who are voting for Trump, it's not empathy and compassion because they're dealing with something hard. It was more me always trying to look at their perspective because I don't know our perspectives are different. And for me, we talked about this on other episodes, curiosity versus judgment, right? And obviously how many millions of people voted for him. The kind of question that we'll talk about later was what are we not allowing ourselves to see or not want to see or not be open and curious to? And I think that was a really important piece that we'll talk about in this episode. But a lot. It's been a very interesting 2 days. And it's very interesting how that 2 days isn't that long. And where we are now and where you are now and how that can happen. And I think the learnings of this is not just about these two people in this election and all that. I think it hopefully the learnings carry into everything, that curiosity and that judgment and perspective and what we're influenced by. Let's start with the anticipation leading up. Like, where were you going into that night?
I think I was feeling like pretty optimistic, to
Yeah.
be honest. I had been so much in my bubble. I spent a lot of times on Instagram threads and it was literally just like blue palooza.
Yeah.
So I think I spent so much time on there and I was really only seeing what I wanted to. I was seeing, like Trump and other places, but I wasn't, it had seemed like a tide had turned where people were sick of the rhetoric and wanted change and really understood what she was going for. And I did not see any holes,
Yeah.
right?
This was the messaging, and it could be what we were looking at, but it felt like there was momentum there, and it sounded like on their side, based off, the week before and some maybe comments and things he had said, that their side was a little worried that she was gaining momentum, and
Mhm.
he had kind of said some things that might have been
Well, and like
hurtful.
what you're seeing, both through clips and also in mainstream media, is like there's a lot of people leaving the party
Yeah.
and they're moving to the other side
Yeah.
and they're like denouncing him. And so you're getting this idea that you're in the right camp.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I've really thought about is kind of this good guys versus bad guys. And that I was feeling like I was in the good guy
Yeah.
camp, right? I was feeling hopeful. I was feeling really nervous. And then honestly, as it started, right as it started, and even the states that we knew he was going to get, I got a sinking feeling he's going to win.
Mhm.
It was an intuitive feeling like this is not, I thought maybe this was going to go differently
Yeah.
because maybe I pictured states that it felt like when Biden went through, he flipped things. So perhaps I was expecting that. I don't know. I don't know what I was expecting, but we decided around like 11 something to turn it off because we weren't liking necessarily what we were seeing. We were both exhausted and we thought maybe getting some rest would be good. But do you know when you like leave one place and you're so tired and then you go to another place and you're not as tired?
Yeah.
That's what happened to me. Like I was passing out on the couch and then I went upstairs and what woke me up.
Yeah.
So I went on my phone and I was reviewing, and as the tallies and the votes were coming in for Georgia, it was looking dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. And I knew how important, like this being a swing state, I knew how important this particular state was to her campaign.
Yeah.
Knowing that there were still others to go, but for some reason, if she didn't get this one, it was going to really, really be hard.
Yeah, I think the concerning part for me, because like especially in the what they call the blue wall,
Yeah.
like immediately the initial votes it showed her ahead, but very fast, all three of those like just went to him, and
Hmm.
you're like, oh, okay. And then you're also starting to hear commentators talk about how even in the places and stuff that she was doing well, she actually wasn't as doing as well as Biden was.
Hmm.
And that's what you want to see. Even in the states you knew he was going to win, you
Hmm.
just hope to see, okay, if there's a little more percentage
Right.
of blue, and there wasn't.
No.
And there was bigger, larger gaps. You're like, huh, okay.
Right.
But you're hearing all this rhetoric over the course of the last 3 months and all these
Mhm.
things. And it's like, that's not playing out right now. Yeah,
Yeah, her
it
campaign was like
was less than
107
100.
days.
Yeah, it was like 100
Like that's
days.
really crazy
Yeah.
how intense these last couple months have been.
Yeah.
So at this point, we're both in bed and I'm sharing with Jarrod. Like typically what happens for me is when an anxious thought comes in, I've word vomit. So I'll be like, but what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this
A
happens?
little
And
catastrophizing.
yeah, well, no, but it's the catastrophizing comes from the thoughts not finding the ground.
Yeah.
So like I'll have the thought, but that doesn't mean it's full blown catastrophizing yet.
Just getting it out there and
It's getting it out there, like, well, what if this? And then if it doesn't land in a place that like softens it
settles it. Yeah.
and settles it, then it gets bigger,
Yeah.
right? So at this point, Jared's trying to go to bed. I'm like now getting riled up because I'm seeing that this is not going in the direction that we had hoped for. It just felt like he didn't care. In all honesty, like I was sharing these fears and I wasn't getting a response back that felt I shared with him and in therapy that it felt a little gaslighty. It felt a little bit dismissive. It was just like things are gonna be fine. It's gonna be okay.
My biggest message is like we just don't know what it's gonna look like
Right.
yet. I'm a person that doesn't anticipate what it's gonna look like and like go to worst case scenario, think like that. I'm like, what we're going to be able to do is what comes in and what happens is like we do in most of the things in life, we react and adjust to those things happening, right? And um, obviously there were some thoughts in my head, but in my head is like I can always do something about it. My thoughts were as long as I can, my family's good and we have all the things that we need, and I can keep my family safe and whatever I need to do, we'll do those things. And obviously, to say this, and I know a lot of people aren't in the situation, we're fortunate, right? We're fortunate to have the ability to support ourselves no matter what a lot of the situation might look like. So I think for me, that's what I do. My list is like, all right, this happens, we'll do this. This happens, this happens, this happens, this happens. I'm good. There's not much more I can do in this situation where, and still feeling some emotions of like, what is this going to look like? I do my process and I can settle myself in and not feel too many big emotions and not have to worry too much. And that works differently for you.
Yeah, it works totally different for me. I think the logicness, is that a word? The logicalness of
Sure.
it definitely comes into play, but it's not, it's like plan B, right?
Yeah.
Plan A is like freak out, be emotional, like feel it.
Yeah.
Like,
And
but what I'm realizing is I don't think I'm actually feeling it. It's a cognitive experience of me just
you're
like
thinking about it.
spiraling. I'm thinking about it.
I
So,
think, and I think the reason it gets out of hand for us, and this is what we talked about before, our dance. This is our dance in most situations. And where I learned and I didn't apply that was first just being there for her. It was more me trying to what my tendency is to do is to, try to bring her down from her emotions versus comforting her in her emotions, right? I didn't do that again. It was a high intense thing, but then it's almost 12 o'clock. I'm trying to go to sleep. So I'm trying to, which always works out to me staying up later, is when I try to do my thing of logical and bring her down and try to bring some logic into her way of thinking, which never works. I ended up being up till past 3 a.m.
yeah, we both didn't sleep. I don't think a lot of people slept. And we're going to touch more on that as we get into like the therapy session and so forth. But that was what was occurring, is that the dance was
Yeah.
occurring, which was not necessarily feeling supported or feeling alone and me starting to spiral. And Jarrod trying to calm that down, but ultimately
Yeah. And then to you, it's
yeah,
that he doesn't care.
right. So I left in a fury and went downstairs.
Things were said on both ends.
Things were said on both ends. I went downstairs and turned back on CNN. This is when I saw he won Georgia. And I threw the remote and went down to the basement and literally felt like I was losing everything, is what it felt like.
Yeah.
Everything I was losing was just like all the hopes and dreams that I had had for the change in the country just felt like it was gone. I just knew it. I knew at that point we weren't going to win. It was going to be because the other numbers were not showing me what we should be seeing. So, anyways, the TV did not go back on, but I don't, this part's really fuzzy and we don't need to go into all the details of it, but we did end up having a pretty big disagreement, which then ended up with us. I guess I fell asleep mid
Yeah.
fight.
You wasted a lot of energy to come out. Just the mental energy, the physical
Yeah.
energy, the emotional energy.
Yeah. So we didn't really talk until the morning. And Jarrod was getting ready to go to work. And I had just gotten up. It was 6 a.m. And I just got up and I saw my phone for the first time and I saw, Trump wins. And as Jarrod was passing by the bed, we were kind of talking about this. And we were just like, how did this happen? Right. And Jarrod posed a question that really was the catalyst for a lot of reflection on my part and started this process of what else is going on. And the question was,
What are we missing?
yeah,
What are we missing? Because that many people, the popular vote, and then how much he obviously from the 2020 election had moved so many voters over to him. And there's a lot of things. Maybe new voters came in, but there's a lot. Obviously, there's new people that were, weren't of age at that
yeah,
point. So 4 years of people are now in that, and there's a lot. And so I was like, okay, what are we missing? What didn't we choose to look at, choose to not see what's there? Because that many people voting for him, especially because he hit the popular vote so much where typically it doesn't,
They
Republicans haven't
haven't
won
won it
that.
since 2004.
Yeah, a lot of the
Yeah.
popular votes. So like what are we missing that we're not looking into? Because there's a lot of smart, intelligent
Good
people,
people.
great, good people that we even know that made that decision. And so that was the question I posed to you. And then so for me, what I did is, when I had times in my day, first I went back and looked at his previous term and looked, okay, let's look at all the things that he did that he had done. I started looking. Obviously, there's things in there I'm like, damn, that's bad. But there was a lot. And I was like, oh, like I didn't know. I never took the time to look. And then I went on to what it was agenda was going to be, right? I didn't look at Project 2025 because there's pieces of that, but that's not his official way he was coming into with his policies. I started looking through, I was like, okay, yeah, there's certain things in here I don't agree with, but there's certain things I'm like, that's going to help our country and that'll help certain people. And if I really believe I want the best for most people, there's some things in here that are still really good that's going to help a lot of people, which I have to appreciate. And I just hadn't, I'd learned a little bit of some of this stuff, but a lot of it was from rhetoric from other people. I hadn't really gone deep, and that's on me, that not being curious. And so that, helped me understand to say, okay, it's not what maybe everyone's saying it's going to look like. And we don't know, but it's not what everyone's saying it's going to look like because there's some things he did last time that were really good for our country. And there's things he's posing for this time that I think will be good. And so that brought me to a place of like, okay, I get it. I get some of these things, right? So that was kind of my way to process use that curiosity and answer that question so I could get more clear and be more educated
Hmm.
on and the way I'm thinking could be different. I engage in a few conversations with people at my work, just trying to understand their perspectives and what do they think, and also kind of just understand what happened, like what do we miss and what happened throughout the whole thing because it's such a different before and after was very different. Like we did not think it was going to go that way. I mean, it was 50-50. We were optimistic she was going to win, but the way he won was like, wow, he really, really, really won, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
So what about you? What was your after I left and what was your day like?
I mean, it was really similar. Like, I think as soon as, because I think actually you got in the shower and we had the conversation afterwards. I can't remember how this happened, but like, I immediately went to his agenda too. I never had gone to his policies and what that administration was proposing. All I was basing it off of is what I was seeing on Instagram and on
And him
Reels
speaking.
and him speaking and the way he was speaking and his history of all of that and the chaos of his first term. And that's what I based a Trump presidency off of. And so when I was reading it, I felt really confused. And to be honest, I think I'm still sitting in confusion because I have been trained to believe that two things. The first thing is I feel that I have been bred to believe that the Republican way is not the right way. And I'm not saying that's necessarily my parents or like it's just I think I'm really trying to understand and question where do these beliefs come from. Now, I do know that there are values that are really important to me that are a part of a democratic administration. However, I don't know if I've ever really taken the time to understand that on either side,
Hmm.
right? So I spent time reading actual nonpartisan information. I think I was on Politico.com for the first one, and then I was on the White House. I was on definitely a bunch of different places, but no social media. And Politico had just posted this story, which we'll link, 1 hour prior to
Mm.
this. So it was live. It was what does a Trump presidency, a second term Trump presidency look like? As I read through it, I had a very similar experience to you that I'm like, this doesn't feel as catastrophic as I thought it was
Yeah,
going
you made
to.
it to be in your head, yeah.
Well, I didn't make it. It was what I was
Yeah.
seeing, right? And like what I'm hearing is that women are second class citizens. What I'm hearing is that we have no value and that all of our rights are going to be taken away. What I hear is that they're going to protect us no matter what, if we like it or not. What I'm hearing is that climate change doesn't matter. We're going back to, fossil fuels and fuck the earth. What I'm hearing is like we're going back to 1774 or whatever fucking date he quoted, and to a time where things were not good. There was like the inequality and inequity was bad. And so that's like what I'm thinking we're moving into,
Hmm.
right? But then I'm reading these agendas and I'm like, this doesn't feel as heavy as I thought it would be. So that was like my first thing that I read that morning. And then again, it went through waves. I think I was also exhausted from the night before,
Yeah.
right? Both with our argument, but also with not sleeping much. And then throughout the day, I started seeing information online about why he was winning or where the Dems, had some missteps or just some different pieces of information. And honestly, I struggled to listen to it because it felt painful. I wrote this thing, like this little essay about my experience. And what I wrote in it was that as I'm listening to this, conversations about all of that had just occurred, I'm like wincing. I'm like, I'm not supposed to listen. Like, this is not what I want to be listening to.
Mm,
This doesn't feel right. This doesn't sound right. But I forced myself
mm,
to be like, listen without a judgment lens. Like, listen. What are people saying? What are people saying? And I had this flash of this moment that I had months before where I had posted a clip of JD Vance and I was just like, like, fuck this guy, basically. And someone wrote me and they said, that's not what he said. That's taken out of context. That is not what he said. Did I ever go and look and listen to what he actually said?
no.
No. I built my judgment off of that. Now, I want to be really clear to anybody who's listening to this. My viewpoint hasn't changed. I would vote again the same exact way, and my values are still my values. And
Hmm.
and I'm bringing more information in, right? But I kept feeling like I wasn't the problem. And like as I said earlier, like I was on the good guys team. And I never stopped to look and go, but are you? And how am I also complicit in this? Because we all are complaining about this hate that's happening, going back and forth. Everyone's like hating on someone and it needs to stop. And yeah, maybe it did start with Trump in 2016. Maybe that is when this all is actually been unearthed after all those years of keeping it kind of under wraps, right? But what was I doing?
Yeah.
Like I was not actively trying to learn more or to be compassionate. I was coming from a judgmental lens. Like, fuck those people. Like, I'm done.
Yeah. And I think to what you said earlier, the social media has played a big role in this, like a
Huge role.
huge role in creating stories and saying things. And then when you get in that tool and you're looking at those things that we talked about before, confirmation bias, it's just going to feed you and feed
Oh,
you and
yeah.
feed you and feed you. So you build up this us against them,
Yeah.
right? And that's where you look at they're bad, we're good,
Yeah.
right? And it really builds that up and it really doesn't leave much space, right, for the opportunity to be curious,
Right. At
right?
all. And so that's kind of where I was throughout the day. And then right before you and I went to therapy, I had like a really big, that was the start of the epiphany for me, which was what did I call you and tell you about? I say the Barstool Sports
Well, I think
thing.
I think it was like starting to hear like now that it calmed down, it was really trying to understand. Right. Well, it was kind of like understanding where the Democratic Party went wrong and how they approach things, but then really understanding they were kind of doing the same thing. It wasn't as aggressive. It wasn't some of the
And
language they were using,
vulgar, or yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
they were essentially saying
He's a
bad things.
Nazi. He's a, and like,
Yeah,
but so this is my confusion. And I'm just going to be like really real because that's what this podcast is. Like, I'm not going to try
it's
and
real and unfiltered.
yes, but I'm not going to try. I was thinking about this before we recorded that I was going to try and I want to be PC. But what I'm realizing is there's no way through this that's PC
No.
because I'm trying to figure it out. And
Yeah.
so I feel very confused in these feelings. That's I want to say this. Like I feel really confused in these newfound feelings about Trump and about Harris and about my allegiance to my party and what that looks like. And so well, I want to get to that in a second and come back to where we were because like I think it leads into therapy, which is an important piece of what we're going to discuss tonight is I called to talk with you and shared kind of a more moderate viewpoint on the election and where we were at. And I was sharing that perhaps some of these things were more sensationalized and they may not actually, be true. And that, like, I think I saw a clip that Trump had said, like, it's time for unity, it's time for these things now. And I'm like, could this have been campaigning? Could this have been persona? Like, could this term actually be better than the last in the sense that, like, maybe that chaos is gone?
Hmm.
Maybe could this be, because for some reason it feels different to me.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel as, I don't know if it's because we've already been under him before and like we did it. So like I think maybe that's also part of it. Like, okay, like buckle up. Like we've been here before, but what also do I know? What do I not know? Could I be wrong? Right? And these are like, so these are like all of a sudden I'm starting to like question my belief system of where, look, there are things, part of this that will never change. Like in terms of human basic rights and women's rights, LGBTQ, making sure that there is equity and equality and inclusion, diversity within our schools, within our workplaces. Like the human rights are really important to me, but there's a fuck ton of other shit that like I don't think about, right? And so it was this fascinating couple hours of being like, what is it like for someone in this place or in this place or in this place? And if you've thought about, not you, but like anyone listening to this, have thought about like questioning your beliefs, it's a very uncomfortable experience because it feels very foreign and it feels very, like I shouldn't be thinking about this. This is.
We talked about this in the last episode, and we mentioned, I think I said this to you today. It's that like belonging to that thing. It's like you're getting caught up. You have to be this. That's your identity is caught up in that. So whatever that identity is, that's like challenging who you think you are.
Yeah.
And that's scary.
Yeah.
Right. And we also said at the end of the last podcast, like stop allowing your beliefs and thoughts to come from things that you're reading. Like go inward.
But I was not even connected to that. That's
No.
what's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like now that I'm here, I'm like, holy shit. And so part of me is so glad that we had that part one and then he won selfishly in the sense that I could go through this experience to be able to really get what you were saying last week.
Yeah.
And so I really, really got it. So anyways, we then got to therapy. I was like, fine. And then something popped up that created an emotional turmoil for me. And of course, it was like literally as our therapist was coming out to grab us. So we weren't planning on having an election conversation,
I
but
was.
oh, you were?
Mhm.
Oh, well, yes, because we had this huge fight. So, but it just kind of
Just
snowballed
went right into it.
into
I think he was already emotional. So
I was like hysterically crying. But I needed to feel all of that. I really needed to go through all of it.
going into the therapy, first it was Nikki, like obviously getting out her feelings and everything, that the emotion she was going through and the fears that she had and all those things. Our therapist was great, did a better job than I did validating you, right? Your feelings, all the fears that you had and all that. And then it really turned to, we finally wanted to get to the point of what happened last night and really describe the situation, everything that happened. She's like, wow, that was pretty intense. But what she really laid out is that we both were feeling the same thing, but our way we process and the way we go through things is vastly different.
And you know what you're just saying that? I'm gonna let you continue on. As you said that, I'm like, that's pretty much everything. All of it.
Yeah.
Like not just the cycle, the dance, but like that is it. She's brought this up multiple times to us, is that we're both feeling the same feeling, but it could be from different angles, but also we process it differently, but we're feeling the same
Yeah.
thing.
And that's what in one of my solo episodes, I said, what connects us is that we feel the same emotions.
Mhm.
We're feeling the same thing, but it looks completely different to us.
Yeah.
Where in those moments of maybe fear or anxiety or stress, I kind of go through my logical things, go through my, okay, this, okay, then to that, then to this, then to that. All right, I'm good. Right? It's going to be what it is. And I know that in all my challenges in life, I've always been able to respond and come on the other side of it. Right? I don't have to overwhelm myself with what could happen. I'm just going to be able to I have the confidence in myself and I know who I am and we'll be able to navigate it. And we've navigated a lot where on your side, you feel things and it comes out and it's
Mhm.
expressed physically, emotionally.
I think about it like this. I feel like I have, like, when the feeling comes in, it's like there's no filter.
Yeah.
It just like it
Yeah.
comes like absorbs everything. For you, I
I have
feel
a
like there's a
filter.
filter.
There's a few layers of that filter.
Yeah,
It's really clean
but I
water
think
coming out.
part of it has to do with being neurodivergent, whether you're ADHD or autistic, is that it's not that you don't feel, it's that you feel too much.
Yes.
And so I think that's part of the
Yeah. You
challenge.
don't have the mental capacity at that point because there's so much information and so
Yeah.
many different emotions coming in.
Yeah. How to filter.
You
Yeah.
can't separate them,
Yeah.
right? And I can go here and do that and go, okay,
Yeah.
right? And I also like believe it doesn't help me. It's not going to make the situation any better
Hmm.
to over feel these things. It's just going to,
But what that comes across as
it's
is,
because as apathy
yes,
comes as he does not care.
right,
He doesn't give a shit. He doesn't care about me. He
right,
doesn't care about my feelings about this.
right.
He doesn't care about my rights. He's against, he doesn't care about my woman's rights and all these things, which is not true. I voted for her because I care about all those things. But then that's how I process, right? And that's what helps me come back to center, which is where I
Mhm.
want to be, right? Which is kind of where you are now. So she really helped us unpack and connect to each other. You guys were going through the same experience, just
Right.
vastly different ways of doing it. She really like she nailed us. Like
Yeah.
she described it, we're like, yep, that's me and that's Nikki. And it was beautiful. And so we talked through that. And then we had to process some things because we both did things and maybe said some things that were hurtful. So we really had to take that time to understand the things that maybe Nick said to me, how that made me feel, and that it wasn't actually about what happened. It was more how we reacted to the things that caused a lot more of it. It wasn't actually the situation anymore. It was what happened when we got to the place of our argument and our fight and the things that we did. So we worked through that as well. But anything else from the therapy session from your end?
No, I think it's really that me being aware, one, that I don't necessarily have a filter to help slow the things down. The second thing is that you're me reminding that you do have a filter and that your processing is going to be much different. I think the biggest takeaway that I had that we got is what I need from you in those moments, which is you have in the past asked me the question, like, do you need support or do you need like advice,
Advice.
right? Whereas what we are recognizing now is that it's not actually about what I need. It's about what you need to do
Like
for
what I'm
you.
feeling.
So sharing what you're feeling.
Yeah, because back to, we've said in previous episodes, I'm a people pleaser. So what's actually you think because I want to make Nikki feel better. My tendency is to go, well, the way I do that is to think about what she needs. But that's actually the wrong way, is what we're learning is that in those moments, what do you need? What did I need in that moment? And what was I feeling?
Well,
Is
not
act,
just needing. It's like
yeah,
when my barometer started going up when we were watching earlier, right? This is when the anxiety started.
yeah,
So you in your head were thinking, okay, well, if this happens, then this happens, then this happens, then this happens, this happens, and then this is our exit plan. Like
yep,
you're working through your own anxiety, coming up with
yep.
plans. I'm spiraling, right? And Jarrod knows how I feel or am thinking because I share it out loud. I'm like, I'm freaking out, or like, what if this happens, in different aspects. But instead of Jarrod saying, I'm feeling anxious too, but here's what I'm thinking about, which is helping me calm
Yeah.
down,
I'm trying to temper you down,
temper
not
me down.
not through my experience,
Right.
but
And
through
so
what
what,
I think you need to hear or
right.
what I could do to
And
calm
so
you down.
what was calm me down every single time is Jarrod sharing his lived experience
Yeah.
in that moment.
And I wouldn't say as much, it's my lived experience versus my perspective. So a lot of time I am sharing my perspective, but I think it's more my lived experience of
Yeah.
how I'm processing
Yes.
and what's going on for me.
Yes.
And what's interesting is that when I say that and talk about myself, it actually calms you down. Or, and I was telling her there was, that seems illogical to me. Because if I want to calm her down, I need to think about what she needs, not what I need to, what I'm going through. I need to think what she's going through and how to calm her down from that. And I still working through this in my head of like, okay, in those moments, go inward to yourself and experience what you're experiencing and then communicate that. I'm like, how would that help? But it does every single time. And I need to keep remembering that because I block that off and go over there and go, okay, what's that? How do I calm her down? And because again, it's uncomfortable for me. I don't like seeing you like that. It's uncomfortable for me to see someone else in those emotions because they do bring anxiety and stuff up for me,
Mhm.
which I don't like to feel, as we talked about before. So I'm trying to calm you down. Actually, it is for me because I don't want to, I don't want to experience what comes up for me in those moments.
Yeah. So I think that's really it. Like that's like one of the biggest takeaways
And that
is
doesn't apply for this. It's every situation.
every situation.
Every situation.
And I think people get confused because they feel like it's a selfish thing,
Yeah.
but me knowing that you're in the mud ditch, whatever you want to call it, with
I'm
me,
feeling the same thing. I'm actually going through the same
that it
experience.
helps me feel less anxious.
And
So
less alone. We're
alone,
connected at
less
that point
alone.
because, oh man, he's feeling it. It's just not the same.
Right.
He's not expressing it the way I am.
No,
We actually
exactly.
are together in this,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
And that's what most people want to feel is we're still together in this.
Right.
It's just different way we look at it or show it.
Yep. No, exactly. Exactly. So
That was big.
that was big. So we came home from therapy and Jared went to bed soon after
Yeah, I got like 3 hours of sleep the night before, so I was beat.
and then I ended up sharing on Instagram some of these reflections that I had. I watched this really great 20-second reel of this girl talking about how she lives in Alabama. She voted Harris and everyone around her voted Trump, but they are not all the things that people have been painting them to be. They're really just hardworking, good people, and they share a very strong level of respect between them. And, we talked about this part in the last episode as well, is that we used to talk to our friends, family that had a differentiating viewpoint. We used to have these conversations. Although there was always that thing like don't talk about money and politics. Like
Yeah.
those are the things not to talk about. But I do feel like it was more tame back then, and no one talks about those things anymore. So anyway, she posts this thing, and she said we have two choices. We can either be bitter or get better, and I'm going to choose to get better. And I'm going to choose to keep fighting for the things that I want to fight for while also respecting other people. And it was kind of the last thing I heard
Mm.
before it all clicked for me. And so I shared on Instagram about my experience of all the feelings that I had had throughout the day. And then also the bewilderment and the question of, you know, how did he win? And why did he win? What am I missing? What are other people's experiences? Which then brought me to a whole other perspective. And that what I saw was, people who are struggling or had real issues that they wanted to have relief from, which is why they voted the way they did. And I said in there that although this wasn't the way I wanted the results to go, I am able to come to a place of respecting 72 million Americans who voted this way and they were voting for change. And I hope to God that the change is the right change for the country. But I was able to get there. And then what happened next was really surprising to me is that I had people starting to reach out to me or like my message, people that maybe I haven't talked to since high school, maybe even people that I didn't have a relationship with even that much in high school, college, people in different states, people right here locally, family members reaching out and some just liking it, loving it, giving me claps. And then I had people on both sides people on Harris' side saying, this message was helpful to help them find peace and to remember that the hate is not what's going to win. And then people on the Trump side saying, we're not all monsters. We just want X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, fuck. I have the opportunity to be a bridge. I have an opportunity to take ownership of my learnings and my experience, and not everyone's going to be open to that and so forth. Like, some people may not receive well
Yeah.
what I'm saying, but I can do that, and I can maintain relationships with people, and I actually maybe can have better ones
Yeah.
because I'm open to their experience. So that's how I went to bed, feeling like lighter, and I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. And I woke up feeling like I had woken up from a bad dream.
Mm.
It was like something had lifted. Something felt lighter. And that felt confusing because I'm like, shouldn't I still be in major grief? Because everything that I thought or everything that I didn't want is now going to occur. And should I be living in, scarcity mindset or
Anger.
angry, scared, all those things? So, but as I was driving the kids to school, I saw the Trump sign still in the ground. And for the first time, I did not have a reaction.
Mm.
It was really neutral. And that's when I knew that I had actually made peace with it because I didn't, it's like, it was like seeing them for the first time. It
Mm.
was like I was seeing them and I was like,
It looked different.
they looked different. It was clean slate. But this is where it gets confusing for me because I'm now on this other side where I'm like, okay, I can see this. I can understand why people vote for Trump. And I can put aside the insane, disgusting rhetoric that has been out there for 8 years. And that's what other people have been doing for 8 years. I don't know if people love him. I don't think they do, but I think that there are things about him and I mean, I don't know. I don't know. But what I do know is that I feel confused in the sense that I feel okay as of right now of moving into this next
And
chapter.
that's okay.
But it feels not okay because then I see things that are like, did I abandon my beliefs? Did I abandon my party? I want to be clear, like I'm not a Trump supporter. I am respectful of Trump supporters, meaning I can very much appreciate their vote and why they went that way. And
You understand it.
I can understand it. And I'm very, very hopeful,
Yeah.
very hopeful that he does actually unite the country. He does support. I saw something Obama said today that when this happens, when we swing, the pendulum swings back and forth, this is how the country becomes more equal
Yeah.
because it goes and helps others, where the next time it helps the other. Like it constantly is going back and forth. And so I don't know if this is what we need. I don't know. But I also know that as soon as he's now elected, like some of the things have been turned down. But then I see other shit on Instagram that's like,
That's the problem.
how can you vote? How can you do this to women? How can you do this to LGBTQ? Like, say goodbye to Abuela. Like, she's gonna be totally deported. Like, I feel fucking confused.
Yeah. That makes sense. Again, we don't know what's next. We know he's in office. We know some of the things, but as you said, a lot of the rhetoric, that's the problem nowadays in this country with social media. Both sides, you have to go extreme in your campaigning, in your brand, and the way you're showing
I mean,
things.
even our own social media.
Yeah. And what was interesting, our therapist actually had an amazing point, which I thought was like, 'cause we're all figuring out what happened, what did we miss? And she had a really good point, and I've had some thoughts about it more, was that Trump was angry and mad. He might have been using some really hateful words, but he was angry and mad. And what we realized is that most of Americans are not happy with their situation right now. They're angry and mad at the state. So he was matching their emotions.
Right.
So we're connected because you're expressing the way I'm feeling.
Right.
Where on the other side, on Harris's side, there was this joy and optimism. But the hard part for that messaging was that she was in the current administration.
Mm.
And so these people are angry and mad, and they're talking about the current administration has made them feel this way, or the things they've done, and she's part of that administration, but she's sharing this. We're going to continue the things we're doing, and keep doing that. And people are like, no, I don't want to continue doing what we're doing because I'm not in a good place.
Yeah.
And he's angry, and I'm angry too. I can understand, and I match that,
Mm.
and that resonated. That again, our connections, our emotions are what connect us to a lot of people who are feeling that way in America, who are worried and can't pay for things and all these things. They're angry and upset. And he showed that he is angry and upset with them. And we have to change things. Where the other side, it was different.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so then I was like, oh my God, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That makes so much sense to me. And it's okay because I think most people, I would say most Americans don't love everything that that side has to offer and everything that this side's offer. If we could piece the right
Yeah.
things, all of us would do that in some way, right?
I have a question.
Love questions.
So I don't know what your thoughts are on this, and like you may not really have much of an opinion, but if you're open to talking about it, I was thinking about the fact that as a woman, all these fucking gnarly ass things that are being said. Did you see what I sent you earlier today?
Hey, bitch, we control your bodies. Guess what? Guys win again, okay? Men win again. And yes, we control your bodies. Hi, I'm your Republican congressman. Your Republican congressman. It's your body, my choice. And men, women again. Men win again. There will never, ever be a female president. Never. There will never be a female president, ever. It's over. Glass ceiling? Dude, it's a ceiling made of fucking bricks. You will never break it. Your stupid face keeps hitting the brick ceiling. We will keep you down forever. You will never control your own bodies. You will never be the president of the global empire.
That's what I'm scared of.
Yeah.
That
And
like
that's the far, 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 far extreme.
right.
But
But
that's what it
what
feels
the
like.
concern is like that Trump elicits that behavior. He lets it happen. He condones this behavior of men being superior to women.
Yeah.
So, when I hear things like this is why I was hysterically crying last night in therapy, was this exact thing. And so, my question for you was, it's fascinating to me that after 8 years of me feeling a very specific way about this person, and we can call it the administration, but I would say really just more about Trump and MAGA, I have been able to stomach the bullshit and be like, this is men being men. And that's not fucking true. That's not all men. But at the same, like Tim Walz is never going to say anything like that, right? But I'm concerned that we've been conditioned as women to believe that this is normal and that relationships with are this type of imbalance and derogatory nature and verbal emotional abuse and really demeaning language is just how we are. We live. This is what it is.
Yeah.
And so I think that's also part of my confusion is that, like, how could I go against that when that is also what is attached to the MAGA party?
Yeah.
And there's not anybody on the Democratic Party that's talking like that.
Yeah.
So I'm struggling to find full acceptance because of, we can call them outliers, but it feels more like,
I think the rhetoric has been that's what it is that. Which it's not. There's pieces of that, but that's not 72 million people. That's not
but
majority.
this is the government in charge. So when 72 million people vote for this, they're voting for
That, but that's not, people didn't vote because of that statement and that reality in their lives, their personal lives, they're angry at certain things and they believe that he was going to help them with those things that they're upset about, that will relieve
I know,
that
I
part
know,
of their
but that wasn't
lives.
my question. I understand that. My question is as women, right? This is obviously not necessarily something you can answer, but like as women, are we conditioned to believe that this is normal? Like this is just what we are. And
Well, I think
it's
remember what our therapist said last night, and I never thought of that, right?
what?
Men had to give women their rights. Men never had to earn, we didn't have to earn it, especially white males, right? Never had to earn it or no one gave it to us. It just is.
Mm-hmm.
We have our rights. But the women had to fight and get laws passed. And so men said, okay, you're allowed to have these. And now they're saying, okay, we're going to take some of these back. And that's the reality. And that hit me last night when she said that. It wasn't just I have always had the same rights. I've never had to earn one. You know what I mean? It just is what it is for me. But women didn't have rights. And then one day men said, okay, you can vote. You can do these things. And that is the reality. And again, when he was in office, we took some of those away. That is the reality. When that's the sad part. And I don't know how you come out from that because there's people that are in power and going to be in power sometimes that have always been men. We've given them that power in this country to do that.
Mm-hmm. I think
So
the change is if we had elected her.
yeah, but then could have. But she still has to, there's still these topics on the table that are voted in or voted out or put in because then a man can come back in and do it again. I never have to question whether I'm going to have rights taken away from me. And that's, man, I can't even fathom that. Right. And that's the hard part. I think where we've gotten a lot of debate and discussions about is I can't understand that. And then, and we've talked about, trauma before and stuff like that. That's lived and that's in women because of their grandmothers and generations before that is carried on through that. And there's a lot of anger there. Men had to give you the rights that you have and can take them away. And I don't know how that ever changes. I don't know.
I think it's more men like you who recognize your privilege and recognize the opportunity to give more women the opportunity to be in an elevated position.
Yeah.
Like you're in an organization where your executive team has done a good job of trying to elevate women into leadership roles, right?
I think now at the VP level, there's more women than men,
Right.
right? But it had to be an effort. And that's interesting. It had to be
Push.
a push
Mhm.
and an effort and
But
intentionality.
yes.
But that's how it happened. Yeah.
But that's how it happens
Yeah.
because the leader at the top recognized the real importance of doing that. And so it gives more voices.
It makes us better.
It makes you better. So
Yeah.
that's how it changes.
But I'm still saying that changes that. But in this space, we're talking about politics and stuff like that. I don't know if there's a time when it ever is not on the table.
What, abortion?
Just women's rights.
Here's what I don't know. What the hope would be is that one day when there is a president who is most likely going to be a Democratic administration that works to codify women's rights. And so it's in the Constitution. The issue is that it has to be a bipartisan law. Like it has to be agreed upon for both, right?
Essentially.
And so coming to an agreement of women will always have a right to choose may not ever be something available, at least in my lifetime. I think it's really disheartening to know that our daughter is growing up in a time where my mother had more rights than she does.
As of right now, yeah.
As of right now.
And I can understand you coming to this realization of yourself and respect and coming down, but that still existing is really, really hard.
It's really hard.
It's really hard.
Because I'm like, okay, I'm going to make peace with this because I cannot live in anxiety. I have to move forward. And maybe there are some things like, listen, I do not agree with RFK. I think he is, I think why I don't agree with him is because he's claiming that vaccines cause autism. And this has been debunked by science. And the doctor who claimed this has lost his license. So I think there are points that he's bringing up around what's in our food and other elements is valid. Like I'm not discrediting that, but his claims about the fact that the prevalence of autism has gone up is because of the environmental factors.
And the hard part is with any pun you chose, no matter what, there's always good and bad. Like you're gonna like some things that one person says or does, and then but you typically don't have one person that you're gonna accept all their views and the way they think of things. Whether it's a president or people he puts in office with them, they're just like there's things that I believe that we don't 100% aligned on everything. You
So
know,
like the thing is for me, I think that this is a really interesting point because so Biden administration has been fine for me. Why? Because I'm a privileged individual
yes.
that nothing really has impacted me that much. Like I'm good. Like I'm fine with what we have right now. And so that's also part of the problem because I'm living in my own
Yeah, because a
privilege.
lot of people aren't.
Right.
More people than are.
Yeah.
That's what that told us.
Right.
Well, a lot more people are than aren't. So we're
Yeah.
very fortunate.
This is hard. This
It's
is
hard.
really tough.
I'm really proud of you though. It's not easy. What you're experiencing coming to where you are, especially with, I've been with you over the last month and all these emotions and then Tuesday and all that. So to see where you were then to where you are now is I'm really proud of you because and again I want to reinforce you that this isn't saying you don't still believe the same things, but you're able to what I talked about is have some empathy, compassion, and be curious, and then actually don't accept what's being told to you and figure it out for yourself and make your own decisions. And typically when you do that, it is going to bring you down. It is going to
Mm.
bring you to a place of more understanding and making, okay, I can get that. And so don't get this, but I can get that, right?
Mm.
And that's because you decided to take some action yourself and get curious.
Can I ask you a question on that? So I noticed after I had found this revelation, several people were texting me or sending me memes and reels about all of this craziness, or like they were sharing their feelings with me. And I really felt different than I did like earlier. And that also made me uncomfortable because I felt like, where do I belong? Like I'm no longer,
Yeah, that's the core of this. We all belong together. When you wrap yourself in identity, then you have to belong to that group or that way of thinking. At the end of the day, we all should belong together. We're all humans. We're all going through this human experience as we talk about. And when sometimes it's harder for us and sometimes it's harder for them and sometimes, right? And that's
but like,
so
how do you maintain relationships with people? Because I know you've shared this with me that it was hard when I wasn't getting it. How do you maintain relationships with people who are, I don't want to say behind the eight ball, but have not made the same connections that
it's
you
hard.
have?
You're not gonna always you don't have to spend time with them. You don't have to always talk to them, right? You can be civil. They're going through their own experience, and that's what I appreciate. Like, work through your process and how you need to grow. And again, if I can live in empathy and compassion, I don't understand what they're going through or what they've been through or their way of thinking. So I can respect them. Doesn't mean I want to spend tons of time with them and hang out with them all the time because that doesn't bring me.
Mm-hmm.
I want what brings me joy and what makes me feel good. I'm going to do more of those things always.
Mm-hmm.
And if at the current time that's not with that person,
Yeah.
then I'm just going to choose not to do it. I'm not going to make a big deal of it and go, they're the worst in the world and all that. It's like, no, it's just you're doing your thing and you're processing or this is where you are in your life. It's like we move on past people because we grow
Yeah.
and we grow differently. That
Yeah.
happens all the time.
Yeah.
So this is just another example of that,
Okay.
you know?
Yeah. Well, I think this is the first of many conversations that involve a change of perspective. And I'm really proud of myself.
Should be.
And I feel really like, wow, this is cool.
And you're
At
still
the
really
same
confused.
time, I'm really confused.
But on the other side of confusion is growth.
Yeah.
Like confusion is not a bad thing. It
It
means
just
you're on
makes
the
me
brink.
feel like I'm a bad
You're
person that I'm
not.
like, oh, like, okay,
You're not
I get
saying I
it.
don't believe in women's rights anymore. You're not saying that.
But like, if, yeah.
You're not. We're not going to agree with everything. I was in agreement with everything Harris was thinking about and wanted to do. That's just never going to happen. No one's going to have the same exact full set of beliefs and full set of the way I think that I would like things to be. Just not going to be that way, right? And in this election, people had big bucket things,
Yeah.
right? And for a lot of women, but a lot of women still voted for Trump.
So many women.
And so that wasn't as big of a bucket for them because maybe they're past, they're not worried about having kids and those things.
No, but I mean, I really think that we thought that it was a bigger issue, but it's clear the economy was.
But you have to think, people, it is an issue because in a lot of states,
I know.
they voted for help with abortion, but then they also voted for Trump, right? So they wanted both.
Well, I really appreciate you having a second conversation about this and it's been a really enlightening experience for me, getting to know myself more and learning about more things. And I guess this is what an adult does.
Yeah.
And
this is what we all want. Like, life's about continuing to grow.
Yeah.
And you only grow through what?
Uncomfortable situations.
The human experience.
The human experience. Well, on that note, we appreciate you as always. Connect with us. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are about, if you have gone through a similar journey with this recent election. And maybe if you haven't, we'd still love to connect with you and hear how you're feeling. Please subscribe, share, comment.
Click the bell so you can get notifications of new episodes coming out each and every week. We thank you guys and appreciate it. Until next time.
God bless America.
God bless America.